What is up, guys? So, I thought I would do something a little different. I have a lot of new subscribers on here, and even though I kind of have my journey and story kind of in the forefront, it gets looked over quite a bit. So, I thought I would post this video kind of to throw out there for any of my new subscribers or people who have recently kind of just started following my journey as to more about me, more about my bodybuilding journey and my life, etc. So I'm just going to start from the beginning and kind of roll you through my life and all the ups and downs and whatnot to get me to this point today. So I grew up in Alabama, in a very loving home. I had a very great childhood and a great life. I absolutely loved my childhood home. I had probably a childhood that most people will never experience. I lived in a very small town. My high school, we graduated with the largest class, which was only 88 people. But I grew up on like 20 acres of land, up a gigantic gravel road on a huge hill out in the middle of nowhere. Like, you could walk outside butt naked and nobody would know. So, my dad was a bricklayer and a gunsmith, and he had his own business in our basement of our house. And we had a separate entrance and driveway that led down to our basement. My mother worked at 3M, and at the time, I'm very proud of this fact, but at the time, she was one of the only female supervisors in the entire building. And she worked her ass off. So both of my parents, blue collar, hardworking, but I will tell you this, I never knew us to struggle. I never wanted for anything. My parents made sure I had anything I ever needed and wanted, to be honest. Like, most of the time, if I asked for it, I got it. So, regardless of if they were struggling or not. So, in the process of growing up in that kind of setting, I was also a very outdoor child. I loved being outdoors. My grandparents, both of my grandparents on my mom and my dad's side, both had farms. So I grew up like eating fresh vegetables and fresh food, and obviously my dad owning a gunsmithing store. It was also a / archery store. We hunted, so we ate our own meat, mainly venison. Sometimes he would go to like Montana and stuff and hunt moose and other animals, but that's how I grew up. And I was able to, we had a freshwater spring that ran below our house, and we pumped water from the freshwater spring to our house. So I grew up drinking freshwater, spring water, all that kind of stuff. I remember as a child going out into the woods for hours at a time, and my mom just yelling out the back door, like yelling for my name just to make sure I was around and I was okay. But I would play in the woods and down by the spring for hours and hours. My dad also had, during specific seasons, so there's like an archery season and a gun season. Since we had so much land, he would set up a course and people would come and shoot targets with archery. During archery season and gun season, he would set up gun targets. So during the summertime or whatever season it was, I would go around and shoot my bow, or I would go around and shoot my gun. And yes, I did have a gun. I don't want to hear your opinions on it. I grew up in a home where I was taught safety. I was also taught that if I was to ever go and do any of that stuff without my parents' permission, my ass would get beat. So guess who never did any of that shit? Me. But as I got older, I learned more about gun safety. My dad taught me everything. I know how to fletch arrows. I know how to put an arrow together. I know how to restock gun shells. I know how to do all of that because I was taught that. I was also taught to respect that this was something that could severely injure or kill someone. So that was instilled to me at a very young age. Because he first put the store in our basement when I was like 5. And I was literally put into fear that if I went down there and touched anything, I was going to get my ass beat. But my dad did a very good job of locking everything up at night regardless. So there was that as well. Anyway, I was very active in high school. So I have a sister. She's 10 years older than me. She played all kinds of sports in high school. And as a young child, I got carried around with her everywhere. So I kind of grew up in that environment, that active environment of playing sports. And in the summertime, going to the lake, going to the creek, going to friends' pools, that type of thing. So as I got older, my parents initially enrolled me in T-ball, and that was the start of like my athlete era, I guess you would say, because I never stopped playing sports since then. In high school, my main sports were volleyball, basketball, and I played summer league softball. I also ran track and field. So I loved sports, all that kind of stuff. However, in high school, I did develop an eating disorder. I would say it started out as restrictive eating, moved into exercise anorexia, then probably developed into more restrictive eating. I wouldn't say I was full-blown anorexic because I would just allow myself 1,000 calories. But then I would go to the gym and I would try to burn off 1,000 calories. So that was a thing that was happening. And then as I progressed, when I went to college, that moved into kind of bulimia. In college, I didn't play sports, but I was still very active. I ended up obtaining my personal training certification, and I worked for several gyms throughout college, including the University of Alabama, personal training clients. So probably around my junior year of college, I stopped all of that. It just got to a point where I could not do it anymore physically. And I really did try to focus more on health and fitness. But I was still not in my bodybuilding era at that moment. I was still kind of following, like, what I knew. And I had a really great mentor. Okay, guys, it's a bit later. I had a bunch of people walk in, so I kind of stopped recording. But anyway, I don't even really remember where I was at. I know I was talking about the fact that I got my training certification while I was in college, getting my degree. And after getting my degree, I moved to Nashville, and I started working in the corporate world. I started working and progressed through this company. I was with that company for 5 years. Ended up meeting my ex-husband there. So yes, I have been married before. And got divorced while we were there. So, and really during that time period, a lot of struggle had started happening in my life. But also, that's when I decided to try competing in bodybuilding. And I had always wanted to compete. I had seen a picture of Jenny Lynn, who was a figure Olympia, R.I.P. Jenny Lynn, at the time in a magazine, and I was just like, that is it. Like, that is like the definition of beauty and strength combined into one, and that is what I want to achieve. But I didn't have the knowledge or the full-on want to or the finances until, until I was like 28. So, and I don't know that my parents would have, they don't necessarily understand it now, so I don't know that they would have understood and been willing to support me in bodybuilding financially. Now, they would support me because it's what I wanted to do, but they'd be like, this is not something that we're going to pay for. So, yeah, by the time I was 28, I had been married for a little over a year or so, and was etching towards my first bodybuilding show, which was the Flex Lewis Classic in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I hired a coach. I followed the plan. I did everything. Anyway, as I was saying, I hired a coach, followed the plan, did everything to a T, and I stepped on stage, and it was the most gratifying experience I ever had at that time. And I was like, wow, like I have actually achieved a dream I have dreamt of doing since I was 18. And I never looked back. I've competed ever since, except for 1 year in 2015. Since then, about 6 months after my first show, my marriage just started going downhill, and I ended up getting divorced the following year, which sent me into a spiral and into a depression, and I started numbing that depression with alcohol. And before too long, that had turned into something that was a constant in my life. And I ended up developing full-blown alcoholism. And in 2015, why I took the break in 2015, was because I went into treatment. But I'll be honest with you, that whole year was just a fucked up year for me. And it's like I would go into treatment, I would come out, I would stay sober for a month and relapse. Go back into treatment, come out, stay sober for 2 weeks and relapse. Like, I think I was in like 5 treatment centers. Like, I was just in such a dark space, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that I wanted to live life, but I didn't know how to get out of what I was in. It was like, the only way I can describe it is being at the bottom of a tunnel. I would say more so the bottom of a pit, and looking up and you see nothing but darkness around you, and you see this little bitty circle of light at the top, and it's like you keep climbing up to try to get to the light, and you just keep sliding back down. You keep climbing up and you keep sliding back down. And I was just stuck in the bottom of this pit in like depravity, depression, despair, all of it. I was not well. And it took a long time for me to kind of pull myself out of that. I went into a transitional living home for a while, because that's the next step from treatment. I stayed in that. I did the full program. I graduated that program. During that time, I was in a relationship, the one I'm in now. We decided to move to Las Vegas, start fresh, start new. We did that. We got there. He has a daughter back here. A year and a half later, he decides to come back, and I was going to come not too long after that. But during that time period, I relapsed. And I relapsed hard. My grandmother got a client coming. All right, guys. So trying to finish this story. So anyway, as I was saying, 2015 was nothing but a big relapse for me, and ended up moving to Vegas, which I'll be honest, I love Vegas. If I could take my business and pick it up and move it out there and still have the success that I have here, I absolutely would. I loved living out there. But when Ryan moved back to Nashville to be closer to his daughter, I kind of just lost all accountability. I also put my recovery to the wayside, and I wasn't doing the things I needed to be doing to stay sober. And I ended up relapsing. Like I said, I ended up relapsing really hard. And during that time, my grandmother, who was and always will be like the light of my life, she was my person. I mean, my person. She got sick and she got put on hospice. And once she got put on hospice, I knew I didn't have long. And I literally packed up everything I could fit into my car, and I drove from Vegas to Nashville, back to the transitional living homes that I had left. Unfortunately, I did not make it back in time before my grandmother passed away, and I have extreme regret and guilt over that. Everyone had said, look, Casey, you wouldn't have wanted to seen her anyway, all that kind of stuff. I would have. I don't care what anybody says. That is something I don't know that I'll ever get over. So, my grandmother passed away. I ended up driving down to Alabama. I stayed for about a week. Went to her funeral, stayed with my family, all that kind of stuff. Came back to Nashville, went back into the recovery homes, and started all over again. I am so blessed in the fact that the community around me didn't lose faith or trust in me, because I thought, I'm not going to get any of my clients back. No one's going to trust me anymore, all this kind of stuff. And literally the day I got back, I had clients messaging me saying, we heard you're back in town. We want to start working with you again. Like, what? Okay. So I had ended up starting to train clients again at that time. Also, during that time period, the gym that I was in was kind of just letting me come in, and as long as I didn't bother anyone, they were just letting me train clients there. But in the midst of that, it changed management, and they just pushed me on out. At that time, I didn't have anywhere to go, no place to train my clients. I didn't know what I was going to do. And one street over from the houses that I was living at is where my studio is now. The transitional living housing director at the time actually put the deposit down on this place for me. And that's how I ended up with this place. Slowly throughout the years, I have outfitted it with more and more equipment, and I'm very proud of what I have built. I've rebuilt my life. I'm 6 years sober, and I don't plan on turning back. Throughout that time, I did compete in bodybuilding. So I won 3 overalls. I mean, I won shows like half lit, which I don't recommend for anyone. So I've been able to do very well at a local level. I've won overalls in multiple divisions. I've won first places in multiple divisions at a local level. But for some reason at the national level, that pro card has eluded me for 12 years now. But I'm still out here trying. Here I am, still going again, still going strong, still believing in myself, because I know I am worthy. And I'm going to keep trying no matter what. This is a goal and a dream of mine, and I am not going to stop until I succeed. So, I get closer and closer every year. Last year, I placed second twice, one spot away. And this year, I hope I can finally take home that pro card. So it's been a journey for sure, one that I am extremely grateful for. People ask me all the time if there are things you could go back and change, would you? On one hand, I want to say, yeah, I absolutely would. But on another hand, I don't know that I would, because I don't know that I would be where I'm at now. And I love the life that I live at the moment. Don't get me wrong, as a business owner, it's hard sometimes. Especially when you have low months and you have high months, and you have low months and you have high months, and then you kind of roll steady for a little bit, and then you get a low. It's a lot, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And if it wasn't for the fact that I'm in recovery, I wouldn't have this business right here. I would probably still be in the corporate world. Like, the whole reason that I have the business that I have is because I was living at those houses, and I was walking to the gym, and I worked at the gym so I could have a free gym membership. And that's how I picked up clients, was at that gym. So I got it all through being an alcoholic. So I flipped that script on it. Anyway, guys, that's more about me and who I am. So hopefully that'll give you some insight into why I do what I do. And I would love to show you my studio now.